And my father told me he'd given my college savings to my brother, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there at the kitchen table staring at the bowl of pasta I'd barely touched. And I thought, this is the moment I'll look back on. This is the one. My fiancé was sitting right next to me. He didn't say anything either. He just reached under the table and found my hand and held it, steady, like an anchor. My father didn't even look guilty. That was the part that broke something in me. Not the money, not the years I'd spent carefully not asking for things. It was the way he leaned back in his chair and said it like he was announcing the weather. We decided Liam needs it more right now. You'll be fine, Stella. You always are. I grew up being fine. I was the older one, the responsible one, the one who figured things out. When I was 9 and Liam was 6, our parents sat us down and explained that money was tight and we couldn't take a vacation that summer. I nodded and said okay. Liam cried for an hour and got taken to Six Flags the following weekend. I stayed home with my grandmother. I didn't resent my grandmother. I loved her. She's the one who taught me to make cornbread from scratch, who let me stay up late watching old black and white movies, who told me once, very quietly, that I had the kind of quiet strength that people don't always recognize but always rely on. She said it like it was a gift. It took me a long time to stop wondering if it was actually a curse. Liam grew up knowing how to ask for things. He was charming the way people are charming when they've never been told no. Not maliciously, just completely, genuinely convinced that the world would rearrange itself if he smiled the right way. And in our house, it usually did. By the time I was in high school, I had a part-time job at a bakery 3 mornings a week. By the time Liam was in high school, he had a car, used, but still, that my parents bought him for his 16th birthday. I bought my own car at 22 with money I'd saved for 2 years. My parents had set up a savings account for each of us when we were kids. College funds, technically, though they'd never been strict about the designation. I knew mine had around $19,000 in it. I'd watched it grow over the years, the way you watch something you're not supposed to want to badly. I never touched it. I paid for my own college with financial aid and scholarships, and 3 jobs simultaneously, because my parents had explained, gently, reasonably, that the money was better left to grow, that I was handling things so well that they were proud of how independent I was. I was 28 years old before I understood that we're proud of how independent you are can sometimes mean we're relieved we don't have to show up for you. I met Owen at a work conference in Austin. He was presenting on supply chain logistics, and I was there representing the nonprofit I worked for, and we ended up at the same table at a dinner nobody particularly wanted to attend. He made a joke about the chicken being the exact texture of a firm handshake. I laughed before I could stop myself. He wasn't flashy. He dressed like someone whose mother had taught him the difference between clean and wrinkled, but who didn't spend much time beyond that. He drove a 6-year-old Honda. He split appetizers and always tipped above 20%. What I didn't know, what he very deliberately didn't advertise, was that the logistics consultancy he'd mentioned almost in passing was actually a firm he co-founded at 26, now with 43 employees and contracts with 4 Fortune 500 companies. I found out 8 months into dating him when I opened his laptop to look something up, and a business management dashboard was sitting open on the screen. I stared at it for a second. The numbers didn't make sense to me at first. "Hey," he said from the doorway, "I was going to tell you. When I was sure you weren't going to look at me differently." I thought about that for a long time. I thought about the way my family had always looked at people through the lens of what they could provide, what they could contribute, how they could be useful. I had spent my whole life trying not to be that kind of person. "I don't look at you differently," I said. He nodded slowly. "I know. That's why I was going to tell you." We got engaged 14 months later in the backyard of his grandmother's house in Vermont. No big gesture. Just him, me, a ring that had belonged to someone he loved, and the specific kind of quiet that only exists in places where people have been happy for a long time. My parents were thrilled when we got engaged. That is not entirely accurate. My parents were thrilled when they found out about Owen. Before that, they'd been politely reserved. They'd met him twice, asked him the usual questions, thanked him for dinner when he took us all out. My mother had pulled me aside afterward and said he seemed very sweet in the tone of voice she used to describe things that were fine but not impressive. After everything changed, my father called Owen's son on the third visit. My mother started texting me recipe ideas for nice dinner party dishes and asking whether we'd thought about neighborhoods on the north side of the city. My brother, Lina, who had met Owen exactly once and spent most of that evening talking about his own ideas for a business he was planning to start, began calling Owen his brother from another mother on social media. I watched all of this and felt a cold, specific kind of nausea that I recognized from childhood. The same feeling I'd had at 9 years old when I said okay about the vacation and watched my brother get 6 flags anyway. I want to be careful here because I don't think my family is made of bad people. I think they are made of ordinary people who took the path of least resistance for so many years that they forgot they were doing it. My mother loves me. My father loves me. They also, somewhere along the way, learned that I would be fine without the things they gave freely to my brother, and they never unlearned it. But there's a specific kind of damage that comes from being loved in that particular way. You spend so long being capable and low maintenance that people stop checking whether you're okay. They assume fine means good. They assume good means nothing is missing. What was missing was simple. I just wanted someone to see me the way they saw him. The dinner was my mother's idea. A Sunday roast, the whole family, 6 weeks before the wedding. She'd been in a planning frenzy. Not about our wedding, specifically, but about the general concept of a wedding-adjacent event in which she could be visibly involved. Owen had been quiet on the drive over. Not withdrawn, just contained. The way he gets when he's paying attention to something. "You okay?" I asked. "I'm always okay," he said, glancing at me sideways. "How are you?" I looked out the window. "I'm fine." He reached over and squeezed my hand once without saying anything. The roast was good. My mother is a genuinely good cook, and whatever else I can say about those years, the food was always good. We talked about the wedding venue, about the florist, about whether the ceremony should start at 4 or 4:30. I watched my parents be charming and engaged and interested, and I felt the knot in my chest loosen slightly. Then my father cleared his throat. He does this before he says something he's rehearsed. I've known this my whole life. My stomach tightened before he even opened his mouth. "So, we wanted to talk to you both about something," he said, "about the savings account." I set my fork down. "Liam's had a rough year," he continued. "The business idea didn't pan out the way he hoped, and he's got some debt he's dealing with. And your mother and I we just felt like he needed a hand right now." He paused. "So we moved the funds from your account over to help him get back on his feet." The table went very quiet. "The full amount?" I heard myself say. "Most of it." My father had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable, but not enough. "We know you're in a good place, Stella. You've got Owen. You've got your career. Liam needs." "That was $19,000, I said. "That was put in for me." "We know, sweetheart. Don't." I said it quietly. "Please don't call me that right now." Across the table, Liam was looking at his plate. At least he had the decency to look at his plate. My mother reached over and put her hand on my arm. "You understand, don't you? You've always been the strong one. You've always figured things out." There it was. 28 years of it distilled into one sentence at a Sunday dinner table. "You've always been the strong one." I felt Owen shift beside me. I didn't look at him. I couldn't. I knew if I looked at him, I would either cry or say something I couldn't take back, and I hadn't decided which one I wanted to do yet. "Can I ask something?" Owen's voice was calm. Conversational, almost. My father nodded, visibly relieved to have someone else speaking. "When you moved the money, did you consider that Stella might have plans for it? Or did the assumption that she'd be fine make the decision easier?" My father blinked. Well, she's been handling her own finances for years." "She has," Owen agreed. "She's been handling her own finances since she was 17 because the message she received with the asking for help was for other people." He paused. He wasn't angry. He was something quieter than angry, which was somehow worse. "That savings account was the one thing you'd set aside specifically for her. I think she deserves to know whether she was consulted before it was given away. Silence. Liam was still looking at his plate. Owen, my mother started. I'm going to tell you something, Owen said, and his voice shifted just slightly. Not louder, but clearer, the way a room sounds after someone opens a window. I didn't grow up with a lot either. My parents worked hard and there wasn't much extra. I built my company from about $12,000 and 7 years of not sleeping enough. He looked at my father directly. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand that I'm not in Stella's life because I can absorb a $19,000 shortfall. I'm in her life because she is the most genuinely decent person I have ever met. And watching her sit here being told, again, that her needs are less important than her brother's because she's capable of surviving without, that's not something I'm going to pretend I didn't see. My father opened his mouth. Owen wasn't finished. She's been surviving without her whole life. That doesn't mean she should have to. The table was very quiet. My mother had tears in her eyes, which I noted with a complicated feeling. My father was looking somewhere past Owen's shoulder. Liam, finally, had looked up from his plate and the expression on his face was one I hadn't seen before. Not guilt, exactly. Something more uncomfortable than guilt. Recognition, maybe. I picked up my glass of water and took a long, slow sip. My hands were steady. I was a little surprised by that. I think I said, we should probably head home. We didn't speak much on the drive back. Owen kept both hands on the wheel and I watched the streetlights pass and tried to organize what I was feeling into something manageable. There was grief in there. Real grief. The kind that comes from hoping a thing will change and finally admitting it won't. There was also something else underneath that. Something smaller and warmer that I couldn't quite name. Thank you, I said when we stopped at a red light. He glanced at me. You don't have to thank me. I know, I wanted to. He nodded once and drove. Here's what I didn't know until 2 months later. My grandmother, my mother's mother, the one who taught me cornbread and old movies and the specific kind of patience that comes from loving difficult people, had left me something. She'd passed 3 years earlier. The estate had been modest, and the main distribution had been handled quickly and without much fanfare. What I didn't know was that she'd also established a small separate account, structured as a transfer on death, that sat quietly in my name without anyone else's access to it. $22,000. I found out when I received the letter from the bank she'd used, a small regional institution she'd trusted for 40 years, notifying me that, per standard procedure, a dormant Teodiad account in my name had been flagged for notification now that I was approaching 30, as specified in the account instructions she'd left. She'd put it there when I was in high school. The instruction note attached to the account in her handwriting said only, for Stella, when she needs it, she'll know. I sat in my car in the parking lot of my office and read that sentence 6 times. She saw me. She'd seen me all along. I called Owen from the parking lot. He didn't say much when I explained it, just listened and then said, quietly, of course she did. I want to be honest about what happened with my family after that dinner, because I think honesty is the only version of this story worth telling. I did not cut off my parents. I know that's what some people expect from a story like this. The clean break, the blocked numbers, the dramatic ending. Life, in my experience, is messier than that. What I did was pull back. Deliberately, clearly, without anger. But without apology either. I stopped being the person who organized family events, who smoothed over conflicts, who absorbed the extra weight so everyone else could stay comfortable. I stopped being available in the particular way that capable people learn to be available, the way that invites others to rely on you without reciprocating. My mother called me 3 weeks after the dinner. She cried. She said she hadn't realized. I told her I believed her, which I did. I think she genuinely hadn't realized the same way you don't realize the temperature of water you've been sitting in for 20 years. That doesn't make it okay, I told her. But I don't need an apology as much as I need things to actually be different. She said she understood. I don't know yet whether she does. My father hasn't called. That tells me something too, and I'm still figuring out exactly what. Liam texted me about 2 months after. Not an apology. A question. He asked if I wanted to get coffee sometime. Just the two of us. I looked at that text for a long time before I responded. I said yes. We had coffee. It was awkward and imperfect, and he said sorry exactly once, quickly, like a word he needed to get out before he lost his nerve. I nodded. We talked about other things. I don't know what William and I are to each other now, not the siblings we were. Hopefully something better, probably something quieter. I'm willing to find out. Owen and I got married on a Saturday in October, in a barn outside of Nashville that a friend of his family had offered us at no cost. 43 people. My grandmother's cornbread recipe served alongside the catered food because I'd insisted on it. Wildflowers, because I've always loved wildflowers, and nobody had ever thought to ask. I wore a dress I found at a consignment shop in the Gulch and had altered by a seamstress I'd found through a local Facebook group. It cost me $400 total. I felt more beautiful in it than I've ever felt in anything. Owen cried a little when I walked in. He doesn't cry easily, which made it mean more. My parents came to the wedding. We were cordial. There were photographs, and they smiled in them. I am still deciding, slowly, what comes next, how much space, how much distance, how much I'm able to offer without losing the ground I've reclaimed. I think about my grandmother a lot. I think about the fact that she watched our family for decades and understood something about me that my parents didn't see, and she made a quiet plan, and she wrote 6 words in her careful handwriting, and she waited. For Stella, when she needs it, she'll know. What she knew, I think, was this. Some people take the long way to themselves. They spend years being fine and strong and capable, absorbing the weight, making it work. And then one day, they sit at a kitchen table and hear the same sentence they've been hearing their whole life. You've always been the strong one. And something shifts. Not breaks. Shifts. And they start to understand that being strong is not the same as not needing anything. And they start to build a life that reflects that. I used the $22,000 to start a small emergency fund, contribute to our joint house account, and make a donation to the scholarship foundation at the community college I'd almost attended before a last-minute grant came through. I wrote a note to the scholarship committee that said, simply, that someone had once quietly believed in me, and I wanted to pass that along. I didn't sign it with my married name. I signed it with hers. I keep coming back to my grandmother's handwriting. 6 words on a slip of paper, folded inside a bank document I almost didn't open. For Stella, when she needs it, she'll know. She didn't leave a lecture. She didn't explain herself. She just paid attention, quietly, over decades, and then she acted on what she saw. That's the thing I've been sitting with. Not the money, not my parents' choices, not even Owen's words at that dinner table. Though I'll carry those for the rest of my life, what stays with me is the question of who was actually watching and what they did with what they saw. My parents watched me and decided I was strong enough to need nothing. That's a failure of something I can only call moral imagination. The ability to look at a capable person and understand that capable doesn't mean complete, that resilient doesn't mean unhurt. They weren't cruel people. They were people who let their assumptions do the work of actually seeing me. And the result was the same as cruelty, even if the intention wasn't. My brother watched me and took what was offered without asking whether it was right. That's a failure of conscience, the part of us that's supposed to pause, even when someone hands us what we want, and ask whether we actually earned it. Owen watched me and understood what he was looking at. He saw that I'd been told, in 100 quiet ways over a lifetime, that my needs were smaller than they were. And when the moment came, he didn't perform anger. He didn't make a scene. He asked a clear, precise question, and then he told the truth in a way that couldn't be argued with. That's what I think of when I think about wisdom. Not intelligence, exactly, but the ability to see a situation honestly and respond to what's actually there rather than what's comfortable. And my grandmother, she watched all of it from a distance, over years, and she did the quiet, steady thing. She made a plan. She kept it to herself. She trusted me to find it when the time was right. That's a kind of faith that doesn't announce itself. I've thought about what I want to carry forward from all of this. Not bitterness. I've worked hard to put that down, and I mean to keep it down. What I want is to be the kind of person who actually looks, who doesn't let the convenience of someone else's capability become an excuse not to show up for them, who asks the question instead of assuming the answer. I also want to be honest about what it took to get here. I spent years being strong in a way that was partly genuine and partly just survival. The genuine strength, the kind that gets you through without dissolving, that's worth keeping. The part that was armored, the part that was I'll handle it because no one else will. I'm done carrying that. It was never mine to carry in the first place. My grandmother knew that. She saw the difference between a girl who was capable and a girl who had learned to ask for nothing, and she quietly refused to let that be the whole story. I signed that scholarship donation in her name because she's the one who taught me what it actually looks like to see someone, not the version of them that's convenient, not the version that makes your own choices easier. The real version, needs, worth, and all. That's what I want to pass forward. Not the money, the seeing,